Welcome to episode 225, the secret to getting clients and team members to stick around.
We are back after our summer break. This is the first episode of 2025, and we have a special guest joining us to celebrate the first episode of 2025. We have in the studio Teesha V, who is General Manager of Strictly Savvy, which is Joe's VA agency. But you may not know, Teesha is also a certified PCM facilitator and trainer. And so it's that side of Teesha's skill set that we're bringing on to delve deep about. Welcome, Teesha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is probably over the last kind of 2 years become my favorite topic to talk about, even more than tools and AI, because I can see the benefits of understanding people more when it comes to business, because people buy from people. We have clients, we have team members. Maybe you don't have team members, but you still have other people that you work with in your business. And those relationships and how you communicate with them is so key to how long lasting and healthy and amazing they are and how much you enjoy your business. So love this topic. Love that you're here, Teesha. We finally got you on the podcast after how many years? 4 years. So awesome to have you here.
So cool. Now, I reckon there's going to be a very tiny, small percentage of VAs listening that know what PCM stands for. So, Teesha, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So PCM stands for Process Communication Model. And it is, I guess, in short, a personality profiling tool, but it is so much more than that. It delves so much deeper, which is why I absolutely love it. It talks about us all having everything in us. So there are 6 personality styles with PCM, but we have essentially a little apartment building or a condominium that they call it, and we have 6 different floors. And instead of us being in a box and being this one thing, it talks about how we all have everything in us and how much energy we have in all of them. So that is why I really, really love it. It's super unique. There are 720 different possible combinations for profiles. So
Wow. I've kind of heard you guys talk about it for a long, long time, but finally I had the opportunity to take that test, and my mind has been blown ever since. And just like Joe, I mean, I can definitely talk about it more than I would enjoy talking about AI 100%, but it's just so complex, and you could literally talk about it for hours and hours and hours. So we are not going to be talking about it for hours and hours and hours, and we are going to kind of keep it at a certain level so we don't overwhelm everyone. But would love to learn or hear from you guys. How did you even come across PCM? How did this become on your radar, and why did it become such an important part of Strictly Savvy?
Take it away, Teesha.
So PCM came about through Joe's husband, Lance. Lance worked with PCM Oceania, and then he saw how amazing it was and decided that this would be a really impactful thing that we could do for Strictly Savvy and understanding our team members. It started with the leadership team going through this process, self-learning, and then we realized very quickly that this was going to be a massive tool that we could use for our entire team. So after we went through the process of doing all of the seminars and all of the learning, then we decided that I would go through that process of getting certified so that we could start training in-house for our entire team.
That's so cool. And how did the certification, what did that look like for you?
It was study. So I got to go back to school, not really. But it was learning all of the content to do with PCM, and there is so much. Like what we're going to touch on today is just a tiny part of it. I am trained in running multiple day seminars. And so you have to learn all of this content associated with it. So it was online sessions with the master trainer, Verna. And then there are a couple of other people that were over in Australia that were doing the certification at the same time as me. So we had to pass a test with our base knowledge to even be allowed to start the certification process. And then from there, it was, learning all of the content and then some more testing and an exam at the end of it as well to actually get certified over in Australia.
How many hours do you think it was in the study and going over to Aussie?
I honestly couldn't tell you, but it was a good couple of months that we
Hundreds of
were.
hours. Like you were studying a lot every day.
Yeah. I wanted to know the content inside and out because I also wanted to prove it to myself that I could do this. And so I really knew that I needed to know the content as well to be able to deliver it and do a good job. So yeah. Yep.
And I know that you're probably not going to share this, but did you get like 99% in your
I'm not
exams?
quite on the final exam, I don't think, but 90 something, I think. But
Yeah. Teesha did really, really well.
not
Teesha.
100%, which my personality phase struggled with not getting 100%, but it's just what it is.
Yeah.
That's
So now you
incredible.
are certified, and like Sam and I call on you all the time, and I know like the rest of the team do. They ask, "Oh, how do I deal with this person?" or "What's going on here?" or "What's happening to me?" Like you are a wealth of knowledge in this. Like amazing to have you on the team.
How have you seen, what's the impact been? I guess, Joe, this is probably a question for you. What have you seen the impact on the business since Teesha has gone away and done all this incredible learning and got 99% on her exam and is now so aware of how people work and how they respond and what's going to happen if they're, or what's going to cause them to go into distress and what they need in order to get out of distress? Like what's the impact been on the business?
Yeah, I feel like this is really showing us why treating everyone the same, equality, is not actually what people need. People need equity. They need to be treated, communicated with, supported in a really unique way based on their personality, style, stack within PCM, all of their flaws. So it's helped us figure out, okay, this person is this PCM stack. Can we say stack? Are we saying flaws? What are we saying? Stack?
Yeah.
This PCM stack. And so what does this person need? Okay, this is how we're going to help them out of that distress, like you mentioned. And this is the support that we are going to give them to have them be able to produce high quality work, have high quality relationships with their clients, and help them be happier at work. Like everyone wants to be happy at work and enjoy coming to work. And I think this has like really ramped that up in terms of the culture that we can now provide, because we just understand them so much more, understand their needs so much more.
And not only do you now understand not only your team, but also clients, right? And leads potentially. I guess you've probably got very quick instincts as to go, okay, I think this lead is probably an X, Y, and Z. But also I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, in terms of your team members, in order for you to understand them better, they would have had to have done the test. Is this then empowered them to learn about their own triggers and the way they work and respond as well?
Absolutely. I find that most people, as they start learning about, any personality stuff, but PCM, the self-awareness is always the first step. And it kind of has to be, because if you're just going to focus on other people, then it's not going to work if you're not self-aware yourself. But people love learning about themselves. So they definitely are all very interested in it. But yeah.
And then they can catch themselves and be like, oh, I'm in distress. That's why I'm doing this thing. And even just knowing that and being able to catch that can help you come out of distress and, function better. And I think too, it also helps us be able to explain to team members how to deal with a client, because you can kind of notice some things that a client might be doing or saying or the way that they act, and you're like, I think they're probably this personality style with the PCM. And then, okay, if they are, what would that mean for how they're behaving and how they are reacting to things? This is how we need to deal with that person or help them come out of that distress. So we've got a current client at the moment who came on a couple of months ago, and the client is in distress, and we can see all of these triggers happening, and it's really affecting the team members. And so being able to explain to them, okay, this client is in distress and this is what the behavior is that we're going to see. So this is how we can deal with them. So let's do really short, like bullet points, but with the detail that they need, because they're starting to come in and really like want to control everything and micromanage, and we can just see the issues that is causing the team members. So we can like say, this is exactly how you need to deal with this person to get the best outcome from them.
It's so cool. It's so cool knowing all that. Knowledge is power, right? And this is like the next level in terms of knowledge. I don't know. I might be skipping ahead. So tell me if I am, Teesha. Is there a type, or have you ever come across somebody that whether it's a team member or not, that's done the testing, but's really fought it? Like, is that a personality style to really fight what is being laid out in front of them?
There is one of the base styles that may resist if they don't have enough proof. Well, they tend to resist it more than the other types, but I personally haven't had anyone yet not believe the content or not really go with it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Hopefully it doesn't happen. But let's talk about that. Like, what's the science behind it? Like, where did this come about?
So PCM was developed by Taby Carla, who was a clinical psychologist, and this all started with a group study on 1,200 participants or subjects, and he studied them to detect specific patterns of behaviors, and this was verbal and non-verbal cues. So PCM talks about things like gestures, facial expressions, words as well, tones. And so through that study, they were able to pick up when miscommunication would start with those individuals, and they would start showing those not okay behaviors. And along with those behaviors, there were other characteristics and drivers associated with each of those types. So those drivers are things like, you have to be perfect for me, or I have to be perfect for you. And so they're rooted deep in us and why we're motivated to do things. So if that's taken too far, then you see the negative impacts of that in our distress behaviors. So yeah, the study showed very textbook, people follow those same patterns and behaviors. And this was actually all done as research for NASA. Actually had asked Taby Carla to help with their astronaut selection process because of the high pressure environments, high stress environments. So yeah, was developed through that, and since then has been used with other massive companies like Pixar, Coca-Cola, Microsoft in New Zealand have used it as well. So
wow. And the Foundry. Don't forget the Foundry. We're up there.
And there's a lot of hospitals that also put their surgeons and anesthetists, however you say that, through it as well. So when Teesha and I went on it, there were all sorts of people from the hospital, very high level surgeons, and because they are also in really high stress situations as well. And it's like life or death. So they really need to be able to understand themselves and others around them.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like anyone that manages a team needs to know this stuff.
Yeah. Communication and maintaining relationships isn't something that we're necessarily taught. Like those doctors, they go to medical school and they get qualified, but in professional environments and romantic relationships, we're not actually trained on how to have those relationships. And often like especially romantic relationships. Your first one is like a crash test, exactly that, and you figuring out what's going on with each other. And a lot of people don't realize at all, or until later in life, that other people are different from them. So this gives a really good toolbox to navigate any relationships.
Yeah. I mean, even well-established ones, like I am totally keen to get Mark to take the test and you take him through it, Teesha, not only for, I mean, he manages a big team through his professional side of his life, but just how we communicate. And I feel like even though we've been together, oh God, I don't know, 14 years or so, you change as a human being, you evolve and you change and you grow. And so being able to communicate through all those big changes is so important. Has Lance and Petros, have they done it? Like, yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
how's that affected your personal relationships with them?
For me and Petros, I honestly think if we hadn't done PCM and we weren't aware of ourselves and each other, then we would have had so many more arguments over things, because we fortunately we have the same phase personality, but I have a very different base to him, so I can annoy the absolute crap out of him, and then I can wonder why he's not playing with me, especially when he's, you know, his battery is depleted. So it's really good just knowing those little nuances in our relationship and why, and that it's not malice from the other person.
Yeah, it helps you understand that other people don't think the same way as you. Because I think growing up, you think just everyone thinks the same. We're all a human. We think the same way. And so, like, you're just so confused about why people act and behave in certain ways. So Lance's thing when he goes into distress is that he starts, like, really picking at me and all the problems with me, because his thing is, like, you have to be perfect for me. So he's trying to, if he's not feeling great and he's in distress, then he's making all the, like, picking out all the things that makes me not perfect, because he needs me to be perfect for him. And so I can be like, are you in distress right now? Because you're really picking at me. And he was like, yes, I am. So then it kind of just snaps them out of it and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is why. And then you can have a conversation about it rather than me getting angry at him for, being horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes it sound really horrible. He's not horrible. He's lovely.
No, I mean,
but
I'm sure
we all have that distress though.
Yeah, I was
Every
going to
single
say,
one of
as soon as we start sharing each of our what we do when we're in distress, we're all going to sound like horrible people. So it's not the plans. Teesha, one more question before we get into kind of the nitty gritty of it. How does nurture versus nature play into, I guess, our results, our base personalities?
So, as in how you're brought up versus what's just naturally.
Yeah, like I guess how you're born, I guess, genetics versus maybe traumatic stuff that's happened in your life that maybe then shapes you.
Yeah, all of that has an impact with this. So, like, even things like, say, mum having first baby, and she's very focused on baby growing and just, never gone through this experience before. So mum's very focused on baby, versus third baby. There are already 2 babies out in the world that mum's looking after and is focusing on the third baby and in the belly a little bit less. Like, all of that stuff, all of those little things that you're taught growing up, like boys don't cry or don't be angry, just all of those things that you learn growing up, especially to do with emotions that are often healthy emotions, they will all impact later in life how you can then process those emotions, may affect what PCM phase you, or sorry, whether you go through phasing, which I'm not really going to talk about today. But yeah, all of that has an impact, is my short answer.
So there's nature and nurture. They both have an impact on how you show up as a human in the world.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it's all set with PCM and your stack or your apartment by age 7. So yeah, there are
by 7 you're done. You're done. whatever they're, sorry, I'm getting I know I'm getting the phrases wrong. Is it like base style? Is that the right word? So by
Yeah.
7, your base style is going to be your base style, and nothing else that then happens is really going to alter it that much.
Your base style is set at birth, and then your stack, your whole apartment stack by age 7 is when it sort of concretes.
Right. Okay. And then we'll just touch on phasing like this, like as you go through traumatic experiences or things happen to you, or you are pushed with an existential question that you have for each kind of level, that's where you might go through those phases, depending.
Okay.
Yeah. If you aren't able to process the healthy emotion associated with the phase that you are, and you're then faced with that, then you may go into phasing, yes.
Yeah. And we know that that's going to just start to get a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we're going to focus on the base personality styles and those 6 styles when we get into the detail. So is there anything else that we haven't covered yet, Teesha, before we go into the 6 styles?
I don't think so. I mean, yeah, I just really think that this is important for any relationship, like especially like you were saying before, Joe or Sam, about the clients in distress. But even if they're not in distress, then we can pick up on the wording that they're using, or just those little things, those gestures, facial expressions, and figure out the best way to communicate with those clients. And then you're not walking into conversations like feeling nervous, and you just know that you can be confident tackling all of those conversations with whoever it is, or team members as well, of course. So yeah.
I think too that, you know how you're listening, have those clients and you're like, I just can't connect with that client. It's always awkward. It's weird. I feel like on the back foot all the time. And it's the conversations don't go that well. We don't get good outcomes. I can never feel like I can make traction or like really get into working in a good flow with the client. That is because you are completely disconnecting with different personality styles and not meeting each other for like what each other needs. And if you can understand these personality styles and what your client actually needs, the conversations can go so much better, and the outcomes that you get for that client can go so much better. And it's a long-term relationship, the client sticks around because you're really gelled. So understanding this can be a real game changer.
Some people as well have asked, well, why can't other people just meet me on my flaw and my communication style? And essentially it's about taking ownership of what you can control, so we can control ourselves. And if we wait around for everyone else to adapt to us, then you'll be left waiting for a while and you will potentially be unhappy. So up to you.
Up to you. All right. Should we go into the 6 styles now?
Absolutely. So please feel free to jump in and ask questions as I go, because yeah, like I said, there's a lot of content with this. So with each of the styles that we're talking about, I want to start with perceptions in the way that each of them perceives the world, because if I am on my thinker floor, which is one of the personality styles, then I would be perceiving the world through thoughts. So I want to do things efficiently and logically, and so I'm fact finding, analyzing data and the information thrown at me so that I can come up with those thoughts, logical conclusions. Versus if I'm on my promoter floor, which is Joe's personality style for base and phase, she perceives the world through action. So she wants to use initiative, figure out what steps she can take to get things happening. Versus the harmonizer floor, say, which is Sam's base and phase, the perception for them is emotions and feelings. So caring, compassionate about other people, and really focused on people. So already there, with only 3 of the 6 base personality types, you can already see those 3 in a meeting, they're going to be focused on very different things.
Mm.
So there is a book that Andrea, one of the master trainers here in Oceania, has written called If You Want Others to Listen, Talk Their Language. And so that, again, is going back to that whole, you think that people want to be treated the way that you want to be treated, but with those different communication styles, essentially without knowing, we will by default use our own style that we're most familiar with to communicate from and to, but essentially if others aren't on the same floor as us, then they might not hear what we're actually trying to portray because they're perceiving it very differently to us.
I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Joe, you wanted to jump in as well. I think you've just touched on something that's really, really important. And it reminded me of that. I'm sure this expression has been around for donkey's years about treat others how you wish to be treated. So we've just debunked a centuries old expression that people have lived by, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like having walkie-talkies or a radio as well. Like if you think of it, that you're sitting there, you're on your frequency, other person has their own walkie-talkie and they're tuned to a completely different frequency. The message might come through, it might be completely static, it might not go through at all. So it's just taking the time to adjust slightly so that you guys are both on the same wavelength.
This understanding that how people perceive the world and what's important to them has become a way for us to actually give praise to a team member that has them hear the praise how they want to hear it. So for someone like Sam, if we're giving you praise, we're going to focus on you as a person. Whereas with Teesha, we're going to focus on the work, the accuracy, and the timeliness that she did that in.
Oh, see, that wouldn't interest me. If you gave that to me, I'd be like, so? That's not important.
Yeah, exactly. So that has been really key. That's the secret to having team members feel appreciated and valued in their work is praising them in the right way. So that's been real key.
Yeah. Okay. So each of those types having their perception and their communication style, but also their psychological needs, which is what you're touching on, Joe. Yeah, because everyone thinks, oh, I like to hear this, so I'm sure they would like to hear it. But actually, no, some people couldn't care less about, like Sam just said, you wouldn't hear what you would tell me or what I would need to hear.
Yeah, that would mean absolutely nothing to me. It wouldn't give me any that dopamine hit that I need. Nah, I wouldn't feel appreciated at all because I wouldn't feel seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, Teesha. So that's the first three. What are the other three?
Yeah. So the other three that we have the rebel, which is my base personality style, which is reacting to things that are happening. So whether they like or dislike something might just be boring and they hated that meeting, or oh wow, that was really cool. So that's the rebel perception. The imaginer perception is inaction. So contemplating and exploring, like the first part of a conversation, imagining in action. So sorry, contemplating, like they would still be contemplating the first part of this conversation that we've just had today and sort of imagining in their own world that in action. And then persister, their perception is through opinions. So evaluating people and situations based on their belief system. So we've got 6 very different perceptions for those base personality styles. And yeah, you chuck all of them in a meeting together and they're all going to get very different things out of it. But in saying that, the good thing is that we all have the ability to go to our other floors in that apartment condominium stack. So it's just, again, having that self-awareness, especially if someone else is interpreting a situation very differently to you. It can be very frustrating. Like, why are you thinking that, or whatever it is? It's likely because they have a different perception to you.
Okay, so we can all go to different floors, different personality styles, but what is it that means that I can is it about how much energy it takes to be in that other floor? Like, how does that work?
So we use the analogy of an elevator to get to our other floors, and we need to make sure that our batteries are charged up in order for our elevator to move. Because if our batteries aren't charged, then that elevator is going to stay at our base floor, which is our most familiar floor and kind of just our default if our batteries are low. So we need to get our psychological needs fed, looked after in order for us to have that energy to move our elevator. So each of the styles have psychological needs associated with them. They can fill their own cup. Other people can help them by giving them recognition for certain things, like you touched on before. And then we can start moving that elevator. And a lot of people will do this naturally. They will firstly fill their own cup naturally by doing things that they enjoy. So for me, for example, with my rebel floor, if I'm talking about if I was rebel base phase, the psychological need is playful contact. So I can do things like listen to music that I really like, have a little bit of a dance party before I sit down to work, and then I can move my elevator up to a different floor. So we can energize ourselves. People will tend to do that naturally. And then when we have moved our elevator, how long we can stay on those other floors will be impacted by how much energy we have on that floor, which is, again, one of the reasons that I love PCM, because we can talk about going to those other floors. So if you have a lot of energy in the other floor that you're being required to move up to, then you will probably feel fine staying there for a while and having those interactions. If you have lower energy, it's likely it will be potentially hard to get there in the first place. Or if you do manage to get up to that floor, then you can't stay there for long, especially without it being draining. So if you ever have conversations and interactions with people that afterwards you come away feeling really, really drained from, it's likely that they are sitting on a floor that you don't have a lot of energy in.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's not about how energized you feel in that moment. It's about how much energy is in your floor as to how comfortable you feel staying there. So when you get a PCM profile, you have all your floors with your elevator, and it has a percentage for each of the personality profiles. So if you've got a very low percentage, it means that takes a lot of energy for you to stay in that floor if you need to be there.
Yeah. So even things like addressing people in the wrong perception or communication style can sort of give the negative charge of batteries. And we don't ever talk about putting someone else into distress, but we can invite people in and out of distress. And a lot of the time, this is, especially with people going into distress, this is a subconscious thing. No, like you're not trying to do that. But if we're talking to someone in the wrong communication style, we can, negatively charge those batteries. So Joe, your communication style is very directive and it's commands. And for a lot of people, that is going to seem like a very harsh communication style, whereas you don't bat an eye to that communication style. But if I then instead communicated to you in the wrong style over and over again, if I was asking you a bunch of questions or just constantly asking you how you feel, I might give you a negative charge and you're kind of just like, all right, like, why are you talking to me like this?
I would probably say, can you just tell me what you want? Just tell
Yeah.
me what you want me to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if people request me to do something, I'm like, oh, yes, of course I can do that. And I'll go off and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, especially in the seminars, is something that's very interesting. A lot with the harmonizer based personality types will struggle to, because we do a lot of practicing the other styles, they will often struggle if they don't have a lot of energy and promoter on their promoter floor, that is, to give those directives. And so you can even give them an example of a sentence like, pass me that pen. And the harmonizer based style will instead go, oh, could you please pass me that pen if it's okay? And so they will soften that blow. It's just such a different concept because it sounds and feels so rude to them. And so even those subtle things that one person's not going to even realize or bat an eyelid over, another personality style or another perception is really struggling with that. And so you get those differences between people.
Often, not often, but occasionally, if we need to send an email out about something in particular, Jo will start it. She'll do the base of the email. So it's got all the important bits, right? All the bullet points, all the information, must need to know information, all the instructions. And then she'll send it to me and go, can you now do the fluffy stuff, please? Which is basically then the softening, right? The bit that they, that just makes it more than just a list of instructions and bullet points.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you're, again, our default is likely going to be that of our base style that we're going to communicate in most of the time, whether that's email, in person, on the phone, whatever it is. But if you're doing that, especially if it is an email that's like going out to all of your clients, then you are potentially missing a chunk of your followers or clients or whoever it is because you're not talking their language. And so they're like, oh, this is boring, or, whoa, that's too much information, or, oh, this is a very blunt email. So all of that stuff, if you're not capturing your entire audience a lot of the time because you're just sticking to what you know.
Too much in one base style. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same when you're communicating with clients, right? Like, why do some clients react badly to an email of instructions? And then why is another one like, why are you giving me so much detail? This is horrible. I can't read this. Like, I just need the bullet points.
Yeah.
So if you can understand that, the communication in email and phone and Zoom all get so much better.
Yeah. So there are a lot of puzzle pieces because we've got those perceptions. Another thing that we've got is the interaction styles. So this is where you have the autocratic, democratic, benevolent, laissez-faire interaction styles. And so, that autocratic is that commands and directives. The democratic is group participation and discussion. And so already with those two types, you can get into a bit of a conflict because if someone that has that autocratic style just comes in and starts giving those commands, and the democratic styles are like, hey, well, we want to have a discussion about this, then again, you're starting to potentially have some miscommunication, some conflicts out of that without even knowing that you've done anything wrong. Layered on top of that as well, which I'm not going to go into massive detail on all of these little layers, but we have personality parts as well. So the director is the personality part associated with the promoter, which uses that autocratic style. So again, lots of directives and commands for that communication style. No anger here, which a lot of people will, like I said before, think that style can be quite harsh. But as long as that person is in their okay mode, there's no anger with those directives or commands. It could literally be like, pass me that pen. It's not like commanding everyone around and telling people off.
It still feels really uncomfortable to me. Just pass me that pen with no please. Oh, can you?
Yeah. It's honestly so simple, though, those little bits that can just trip people up. It's amazing, really. Yeah, we've got other personality parts as well. The computer, so the requestive fact finding part. So those are the styles that will prefer to ask a question instead of tell someone or give a command. The emoter, which is the playful part, so that goes with that reaction style. They're like, wow, this is so cool. And we also have the comforter, which is the nurturing part, so addressing the emotions, like, I'm glad you're here kind of style. So there's all these different layers to it which make up the way that someone is communicating and why they're doing it. And so yeah, you can see it. I mean, Joe, I could use you and Lance as an example. Lance has that democratic, that requestive style for communication, and you have that autocratic director style. So how do you guys find that?
So, because we understand each other's personality styles, it's not like a triggering thing where it's like, oh, he's just always like, why does he ask me all these questions all the time? Like, I do think that, but then I'm like, okay, but this is what he needs. He needs to know and understand and the why and all that stuff. So I don't have a reaction to him of like, why are you doing that? It's annoying me. I can actually just answer the questions because I know he needs that. And then if I direct him to do things the same, like he knows that I'm not being rude. He knows that it's my personality style. It's not that I'm like trying to be horrible or there's any anger in it. It's just that's how I request things. So he accepts that and understands why I do that. And I think just like otherwise we'd just be at friction and at odds all the time. And you just have all those miscommunications. But understanding it, you can actually accept when people do something and you don't have to go into your own distress because they're, not speaking to you in the right way that you need. So
Yeah.
stops a lot of arguments, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to quickly touch on the psychological needs, if that's okay, and then I can move more into that distress side of things because, and again, I'm not going to talk too much about phasing because that's a whole other rabbit hole. But if we're talking about the psychological needs, we are talking about that of our phase. So I'm just going to talk about this like our base and phase are the same. So this is on top of basic needs like food, water, roof over your head type thing. So each has psychological needs that we need, and that is what is going to help us, like I said before, charge up our batteries, be able to move our elevator, be in an okay place. So for those with the thinker psychological needs, they need the recognition of the quality of the work and their time structure. So that was the example that you were giving before, Joe, because that is my current phase. So that is the psychological needs that I need. Versus the persister phase, they have the need for recognition of the meaningfulness of their work and their convictions. So more, instead of the thinker quality, the persister phase needs recognition of like the impact, the meaningfulness of their work instead. So even just getting those two distinctions or having those two distinctions, you can have a very different example. And again, if you're like telling me impact of my work, I probably wouldn't respond as well as if you were telling me about the quality of the work that I have done. The psychological need for harmonizer as well is the recognition of person and sensory. And so that again is not recognition anything to do with work and the job that they have done, but more about them as a person. So that's very important. And again, Sam, why you said before you wouldn't be interested in what my psychological needs is, because yours is actually very different. And so a lot of people, especially at work, are going to tell their team members like, great job on that. If they have the harmonizer psychological needs, then they will, they're probably still going to be like, cool, thanks. But it's not going to mean as much to them. It's not actually charging their batteries as much as it would if you could give them recognition of person. So it's very important knowing that people actually want those different things.
So could that be like, Sam, you're such an important part of the team. Like, we love having you here.
Yeah.
You're the best.
About the person. Yeah. So you're so thoughtful. You've created such a warm environment for all of the members in the members club. Thank you. You mean a lot to me.
Oh yeah, that's better than your version, Joe.
Yeah. And then the secondary need of, well, not secondary, but the other need is the sensory need as well. So that is, again, something that you may do fairly naturally, Sam. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, your favorite warm drink and making sure that the area that you work is filled with things that you like pictures of your family, anything to do with sensory, like the sight, smell, touch.
Holding crystals in your hand, that kind of thing.
Crystals, something smelly. I always have to have music, like something that sounds good in the background, and that could be different things on different days. But yeah, I always have some type of sound going as well. Yeah.
So we also have the imaginer with the need of solitude, the rebel with the need of playful contact, and promoter with incidents, which is a lot of action in a short amount of time. So all of them are very different, and so we all will naturally do some things to charge up our batteries, but a lot of the time people that are constantly in a not okay space, they haven't had their batteries charged. They aren't doing things for themselves to feel okay, feed those needs. And so that's another thing with PCM that's really great, is being aware, okay, these are actually the things that I need to be in an okay place so I can be in an okay place for my team or my spouse, and actually having practical examples of things that you can do to meet those needs as well.
You can totally see how somebody that manages a team who isn't even aware of any of this, I mean, naturally you might have some people that naturally have, I guess, a high EQ, so are kind of aware of it, but I mean, this is a whole different level of detail, isn't it? But you can see those managers that have got no clue whatsoever. They treat every single member of their team exactly the same way, and then kind of going, well, why does everyone seem so unhappy all the time? Or why is everyone always coming to me with problems? Or why is this third team member in the last 3 months now leaving? Something different. I mean, this will be why, right? Because you're potentially not meeting any of their needs.
Why does that person annoy the crap out of me all the time?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as we move into the distress talk as well, I find it very interesting because when someone is in distress themselves, they, again, this is subconsciously, invite other people to be in distress with them, because we talk about it as if we're putting a mask on, because it's not us. Like, everyone has these distress patterns that are associated with their personality phase. And so they're putting this mask on the behaviors, less desirable behaviors for sure. And so when those behaviors start happening, then other people, they're, without being aware of all of this, a lot of the time will just put their own mask on and give those distress behaviors of their own right back. Because if someone's being a dick to you, then okay, well, fuck you, I'm going to be a dick back to you. Whereas if you can be aware of what's happening, why it's happening, you can invite those people out of distress instead. You can remain in an okay place yourself, knowing that it's actually got nothing to do with you, and that this person's got some story that they're telling themselves. Because the further that you go into distress, the further away from reality you actually are in terms of what you're telling yourself in your head. Which, so distress is a very, very interesting thing. But like I said, we all go into distress. We all have these distress patterns. None are better or worse, and it can be a bit of a confronting conversation.
Well, understanding this, the distress patterns, has been so helpful for Sam and I, because we now have this ability to say, Sam, you're going into distress, right? Let's catch this now. Like, what do we need to get you to do to come out of distress? So see how I'm even saying, what do we need to do to come out of distress? That's a very promoter thing to say. So what can we do to have you come out of distress? And then same for me, like you say to me, Joe, you're doing the thing again. And I'm like, crap, I'm doing the thing. I must be in distress. Okay. let's get me out of it. So let's go into detail just on the promoter and the harmonize distress, so I can kind of give some real life examples about how this shows up.
Yeah. So there are 3 degrees to distress. So the first degree is called the doorway of distress, and it can quite often only be for seconds, really, really quickly, and it does happen multiple times a day as well. For the promoter in the first level, that is expecting others to fend for themselves.
So I'm like, screw you. I'm just going to do my thing over here and you guys can just deal with yourself.
Yeah. It's all coming back to the promoter wanting action. And so if action's not happening, then why can't you guys just do it, you know?
Yeah. 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 Why can't you? Yeah.
For the harmonizer first level, it is over adapting to others.
Totally. 100% that's me. I try and fix things overly. So,
yeah. So what's interesting about the first level of distress is that it's very easy to invite someone and help them come back out of that first level. And that is simply by communicating to them in the right style and perception. So that's why it's really important for us as we're doing all of the learning about PCM to first go through those perceptions, go through the communication styles that are preferred for each of the styles. Because if you're seeing that first degree of distress, then you can simply communicate to them in the style that they need to help them come out of that distress.
Which has been so hard for someone to, when I'm in distress, if all I need is someone to be like, can you do this quick thing for me? No, not even that. Like, do this thing for me. I would come out of distress and I would do the thing, take action. I would get that incidence, and then I would be like, oh, this feels good.
It's taken me a long time to realize that it's safe for me to do that with you. In fact, that is what you need, because I would naturally, because if I am overwhelmed or if I'm in that place, that's the last thing I want is more to be told to do more things. Knowing that, no, actually, it's actually going to help you if I go, Jo, could you do this one quick thing for me?
Like we did this the other day. I was in distress and then you were like, okay, right. What is your distress thing, right? You need to do things. You need to like get some action happening. And you were like, okay, what would feel good to take action on? I was like, okay, I'm going to go into Zero and I'm going to do some reconciling. And she's like, what? Why would you want to do that? And I did it. And I was like, oh, this feels so good. Okay, I'm good now. I'm out of that distress and I'm taking action on some things, which seems so counterintuitive.
It really does.
But it really helped me. It really helped.
Yeah. So that's probably moving into your second degree of distress as well, because the second degree is slightly different. In order to invite someone out of, you need to offer them their psychological needs, or they need to get their own psychological needs met. So again, it's more about taking ownership. We can't expect other people to constantly give us what we need in order for us to be okay. So in the second level for promoter, that is that incident's psychological need that you need to help you get out.
This might also be why when we were in burnout 2 years ago now, that I started actioning as many things as I possibly could, because that was probably my natural instinct to try and get me out of that distress, is to like start actioning and being productive.
And I was just like, you've got to stop, Jo. Like, you're adding to our plate. And that made me feel even more overwhelmed and even more wanting to just like hide.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay, so what's Sam's kind of second level?
So for harmonizer second degree, we would see like self-doubt, or quite often you'll see like passive-aggressive communication, like lacking assertiveness, and so not being direct in comms, and so that may come out as passive-aggressiveness, which is something that I will commonly sort of pick up on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
If you're
is
in
such a
distress
kind
and
of
I'm trying to check in, you'll just like ghost me.
yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll be like, oh my
Yeah.
God, have I done something wrong? I
Oh,
need Sam to respond to me, but she just won't. Yeah.
yeah, I'll totally
Mhm.
disconnect.
Mm.
Totally disconnect. Yeah, which is really interesting because in somebody out, like I hate people that are passive aggressive. Like I just think it's a really horrible trait. So knowing that I guess it's sometimes it's being aware of your kind of the things that you don't really like about yourself that you
Mhm.
then see really obvious in others. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's uncomfortable.
Yep.
It's so confronting.
Yeah. That is a thing, right? The thing you don't like in other people is the thing that you have a problem with yourself on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 Okay. And so that's why Sam too, you in distress, you'll do things like, oh, did everyone like that? Was it good? Is everyone having a good time? Did we do good? Like needing that, like,
Yeah.
is everyone else, and it's always about other people. Did other people have a good time?
Oh, do
Did
you want to talk
other
about
people
this?
like it?
Like, should we talk about our
Yeah.
annual awards debrief?
Uh-huh.
It took 2 years for us to figure out that I needed everyone in the room afterwards to basically all tell me that everyone had an amazing time, then specifically why they had an amazing time for me to
Mhm.
be able to sleep that night. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if I just went straight home, I would just like my head would just be everyone hated it. That didn't go well. Oh my God, we should have done that better. Not going to do it again. That's it. Never again.
Yeah. Nobody likes me.
No one likes me. No one likes it. What the fuck was that about? Why did we do it?
So we would be up way past midnight, just like 2, 3 in the morning, just debriefing and reassuring Sam. But it's gotten better. We did that once and then it's gotten better. It's gotten a shortened amount of time.
I feel like, yeah,
We got it.
probably
Yeah.
because you know exactly the language to use,
Yeah.
which gets me out of it. And I'm now aware that that's me in distress. So
Yeah.
let's just
Mm.
stop it. Like it's just dumb.
Yeah. It's the stories, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So in the second degree, that's when it does start getting a bit more yucky. It's people either move into the attack, the blame, or the drooper, which is kind of like a victim-y role. And then quite often, yeah, I mean, seeing those behaviors, it's going to invite the other person being confronted with that into their own distress. I can give you an example of myself if you like.
Mhm. Yeah.
From when I was younger, actually. So I was in my rebel phase at this time, and I was confronted with someone in their persister second degree of distress, and they attacked me over the way that I looked not being up to their standards and that it was disrespectful. And so that invited me, and again, that's not on them. I wasn't self-aware at this point, obviously, that this was happening. So I also then put my distress mask on, moved into my rebel second degree of distress, which is being vengeful because they pissed me off. So I then wanted to get them back and make them feel worse. So I sought out a way to get revenge on them and the way that they made me feel. And I mean, as a teenager, I may have relocated one of their shoes so that they didn't think that the pair was missing, but one shoe went walkabout, so they would never know. But that was my way of like getting that revenge. Like, I'll show you, you made me feel crap, so I'll make you feel worse. So like little interactions like that, and when you see those behaviors, it's like, oh, that person's being so unreasonable or whatever. It's likely that they're in distress. There's a reason, and that's triggered something in them.
Yeah. So I can give you another example of a distress thing that I do. Is if I'm in distress, I will go into the Strictly Savvy chat in the leadership team, and I will be like, what's happening with this? Where are we at with this? Because I feel like other people aren't taking enough action. So I'm like getting them to tell me how they're going to take action in a really like non-helpful, aggressive, direct and rude way. Also, apologies to the Strictly Savvy team. I'm now aware of that. And the other thing that I would do is I will force action to happen.
Yeah.
So I will go along to a team meeting and I will announce something prematurely to make it have to happen now, be forced to happen, and forced to happen quickly because I've just announced it.
Yeah. So that's that promoter, second degree. The explanation or the name of it is ignoring or breaking the rules. But often when you hear that, you think of typical rule breaking. But for you, Joe, it's that like skipping a step, forcing the hand of other people to then have that action happen because you've skipped that step, broken the rules, and now that action has to happen.
Yeah. You did that in a live, Joe Jensen, in a live inside the Scale Up Mastermind recently. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, go for it.
So I don't. So so I'm assuming for you to have done this, so you were already in distress going into this meeting. If you were
Yeah,
then,
must have been.
so don't know why, but anyway. So you were in distress. You announced to everyone inside the Scale Up Mastermind that this year's VA business planners that Sam was gonna send out this year's business planners on X date, and then you invited me to then be in distress, and I immediately went passive aggressive, was making snarky comments, and then physically, in a very joking way, passive aggressive way, right? Then was like, right, I'm out of here, and I slid my chair out of
like going backward, back and back and back.
I went, see you later. I'm out of here. Because I was then in distress because I felt as though you had publicly then put this deadline, a public deadline that I didn't want to be made public, because that then all of a sudden put a lot of pressure on me to deliver.
Yeah.
And that immediately did, because then the people inside that were on that live were like, oh, well, I'm going to get it by such and such. I'm like, oh, no, but there's so much out of my control around this. Like couriers are involved. Like I've got to do this, and this before I hadn't even picked them up from the printers, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, so I was subconsciously, and we didn't even know that this was happening until we unpacked it afterwards.
Yes.
Subconsciously, I was ensuring there was no way out of action happening. I wasn't purposely trying to make you feel under pressure or anything, but subconsciously I was trying to get action to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
I mustn't have felt like action was happening, or Fascinating,
Fascinating.
But we've got such a good relationship that we can actually talk about that afterwards and being like, this is how that impacted me. This is what happened.
Yeah.
I must have been in distress. Oh, that put me into distress. Like we can actually have that conversation. And I think this is one of the massive impacts that understanding PCM can have, because we may not have continued a relationship. We may have like separated as business partners if we weren't aware of each other's personality styles, because we just pissed each other off when we were in distress. So having clients and team members and other people that you work with, partners, like to have things be long term, for people to stick around, have really healthy conflict in their relationships. Like understanding this is the secret.
Yeah.
It is the secret to long-term relationships that are really healthy.
Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to have those miscommunications or go into distress, but it means that you've got, like I said at the start, tools in your toolbox to help get yourself out of that, or be able to support others when you notice that they're in that mode as well. Like you said, whether that's romantic, clients, team members, whoever it is, like it's you can use it absolutely everywhere.
I know that there's going to be a question on every person's mind right now listening to this. It's like, how do I find out what my personality stack is? Where do we go from here, Teesha?
So next step would be getting in touch, and then the first step through the PCM process is filling out a questionnaire to get your own profiles, because like I said, self-awareness is that first step. And so get your profile, and then there is a debrief associated with that as well to talk through some of the basics, I suppose, of the profile and of all of the different styles. So go into a little bit more than we have today.
Cool. Okay, we'll drop your details down below, Teesha, so that anyone who is intrigued by this and wants the secret to having those long-term relationships with clients and team members can go and check it out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me today, guys. It's been a pleasure, and I absolutely just love talking about this topic. So
we have loved having you because of your incredible knowledge that you have about PCM. It is so, so valuable. So thanks for the great work that you do, Teesha, and bringing us on time for 1 hour inside this podcast episode. How'd that feel? Is it good?
yeah, pretty good.
Meet your psychological needs? More
The
specific.
time part was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, thank you so much, Teesha. You are really knowledgeable, and we appreciate you bringing this knowledge to our listeners.
Thank you. Great being here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sam and Joe VA Show. If you'd like to find out more, head to the VA Foundry website to check out the mastermind and the amazing resources, courses, and coaching.
You can find us at thevafoundry.com.